I'm pleased to present to you the budget overview for the Department of Public Works and Transportation. And I'll just highlight again certain sections and then turn it back over to you. On page 1, the fiscal year 24, and I just want to start by saying thank you to Ms. Reed, Mr. Johnson, Ms. Cluster, and the Public Works team for their assistance and in answering many questions during our staff reviews. The fiscal 24 proposed budget for the Department of Public Works and Transportation is $72 million, approximately $72 million, an increase of $26 million or 56% above the fiscal year 23 approved budget. The general fund portion of the budget increased by $4 million or 29.8%, $4.9 million or 29.8%. This increase is primarily due to inflationary contractual costs, other transportation services, additional resources for right-of-way mowing and tree maintenance, as well as mandatory salary requirements and compensation for a total of 11 new positions. Proposed grant funding is $26 million, approximately $26 million, and with an increase of $19.8 million or 318.5% above the fiscal year 23 approved budget. And I'd like to say that the department has done very well when it comes to obtaining new budgets for various programs. The proposed Stormwater Management Enterprise Fund is proposed at approximately $22.7 million, an increase of $1.3 million or 5.9% over the fiscal year 23 approved budget. And the increase is due largely to operating expense costs associated with fringe benefits, salary adjustments, and the increase in funded vacancies. And the Transportation Services Improvement or Special Revenue Fund is being proposed at approximately $1.7 million, which is consistent with the previous year's budget. The department is reporting that they may need a supplementary appropriation to cover costs associated with enhanced litter removal initiatives in street sweeping and right-of-way activities. Moving on to page 2, you can see the table there comparing the actual fiscal year 22 funds with 24 proposed budget of $72 million. And the change between fiscal year 23 and 24 proposed is about $26 million. The staffing authorized count for the department for 24 is increased by 36 positions to authorize full complement of 451 positions. Below that, you'll see the comparison for the general fund. And again, actual total budget for the general fund was about $15.2 million. And the proposed for this fiscal year 24, is about $21.5 million. Moving on, the authorized staffing count for the general fund is an addition of 22 positions to 288 positions in the general fund. Highlights from that fund, compensation is proposed at 21.6 or $7 million, an increase of about $3.4 million or 18.7% above the fiscal year 23 approved limit or levels. The department has included $638,000 in proposed fiscal year 24 general funds to cover overtime costs. And as of March 23, the department projects overtime expenditures at $607,000 or $31,527 below the fiscal year approved level. As of March 10th, the department reports 62 general fund vacancies consisting of 59 full-time and 4 limited term. And also, as of March this year, the department reports that 22 employees have resigned or separated. And below is a chart just showing the attrition level, the attrition trend from fiscal year 18 to 22. This year, the attrition rate to date is 6.98%. Fringe benefits are proposed at 1.4 or 5 million or 20.4% to align with anticipated costs. And on page 4 is just a summary of the operating expenses, and you'll see in the table operating contracts, gas, oil, general office supplies, office automation, and vehicle equipment are the top increasing categories. Overall expenses are proposed to increase by 6.9 million or 10.6% above the fiscal year 23 approved budget. Moving on to page 5, I'll highlight the capital outlay. Well, I'll make a note that operational contracts can be viewed on attachment 4 of the department's first round responses, and that's attached to your package. Capital outlay in fiscal year 24 includes approximately 12.7 million, or an increase of 886,000 or 7.5% above compared to the fiscal year approved capital outlay budget. And they will use these funds to purchase fixed route buses, 3 additional street sweepers, and a local match grant for supported bus purchases. Of note is that the department plans to receive an additional 8 battery electric buses using grant funding. And they've been doing very well in acquiring new battery electric buses each year. Going on to recoveries. The fiscal year 24 proposed budget includes 93.4 million in recoveries, which is an increase of 7.7 million or 9% above the fiscal year 23 approved level. And that increase is due to operating expenses associated with the bus, prior year salary adjustments, recoverable staffing for 11 out of 14 new full-time positions. The largest recoverable fund is the Washington Suburban Transit Commission. And just some highlights from the fund. As mentioned, the department had engaged in a litter blitz, and that litter blitz strategy through the strategy they have quadrupled their efforts for litter and mowing, and they're continuing to educate residents about the negative impacts of litter in our communities. Proposed funding also includes 519,000 additional for the 6-mile radius around MGM National Harbor for street sweeping, roadside mowing, landscaping, and that's supported by VLT funds. And I think in the last session we discussed, and may not have mentioned, that we also are using VLT funds for additional, I think it's 12 big bellies in that radius around National Harbor. The department is assessing 311 backlog, which dates back to 2015, and they are going through a lot of these systematically assessing them, seeing what can be closed and what service requests still need to be fulfilled. In 2020, in 24 and 25, allocations for curb and road rehab, which I'll mention later, maintains the current year funding. Moving on to challenges, staffing is a challenge that as you've heard, many departments are having, and they're working very aggressively to not only do promotional hires, but also to lower the barriers to filling positions because of the labor market, shortage in the labor market. They are presently do not have the ability to institute incentives or bonuses for some of the key positions that they need to hire for. So they're working very creatively with partners including OHRM, OIT, Office of Central Services. There have been challenges to the supply chain, but those seem to be easing a little bit. There has been delays in some of the delivery for buses and heavy equipment. Moving on to transit services, you may be familiar with the Reimagine Public Transit campaign, or notably the PGC Transit Transformation Initiative to improve rider experience through outreach and marketing opportunities. And they have partnered with WMATA on the Better Bus Network Redesign Project to redesign the bus service in the county. And the director, I'm sure we'll talk more about that. Department implemented Saturday service last fiscal year, and that seems to be doing very well. The staff is developing more robust services by implementing and maintaining 30-minute frequencies with the goal of expanding to 15-minute wait times on mainline corridors for the bus. The Proud to Charge initiative, there's a description of that on the bottom of page 7. And notably, the department is moving aggressively to be 70%, have a 70% electric fleet by the end of 2035. Moving on, page 8, there's just a little description there of the costs for charging stations. It's one thing to get the buses, but you have to be able to charge them, and so there is a breakdown there of what the infrastructure costs are like. Some other challenges are also fare evasion. We've heard about that notably with WMATA, and the bus is also experiencing the same, so fare revenues are down. Bike and rideshare program, I'll just highlight there that the goal is to install 2 bike share stations at new locations and around our educational facilities, University of Maryland, PGCC, and near Eleanor Roosevelt High School. There was a grant award, or there will be a grant award of $80,600 to expand the Capital Bike Share system by installing 4 docking stations and 40 shared bicycles. And the county matches $26,900. Moving on to page 9, I'll just highlight here that the department is ramping up its efforts to revive the taxi cab regulatory efforts. They will be having an inspection. They're also working on obtaining a universal taxi digital dispatch system, and they have been working with OCS to do that. Right now, there are about 60 to 70 operating taxis in the county, and as I mentioned, the inspection is planned for this spring. Moving on, I'll highlight TOD kind of at the end of the presentation. I'll go to road repair and maintenance. The department had 5 weather events this year, saved a lot on their snow budget, which they have been able to use elsewhere in their budget. They are maintaining 2,000 miles of roadway. Potholes patching increased by 34%. They are actively responding to service calls and anticipating maintaining a rate of 90%. The pavement condition index is about 55.6. That's fair condition. They have just completed a county-wide drive-through of all of the county roads, and data is being uploaded and assessed so that they can get a good picture on what our county roadway system looks like in terms of the condition, pavement condition. I know they'll speak more to that. Moving on to litter and illegal dumping, and as was discussed in the last presentation with Department of Environment, the DPW&T has a large role, especially with the illegal dumping piece. They have redoubled their efforts for litter collection. And as of March 15th, they have removed 3,166 tons of litter and expended about $1 million in contractual expenses. They anticipate in 2024 that they're going to spend a lot more, and in the amount of $4.8 million in the 24 budget. They're using in-house crews as well as contracted workers to address the illegal dumping in the public right-of-way. And that continues to be a challenge, but they have a different strategy that they're using going into 24. You can see highlighted at the bottom of page 11 kind of their beautification expenditures. I'm going to skip down to vehicle and equipment. In 24, they are looking to purchase 8 vehicles. 8 vehicles, 4 one-ton heavy-duty hybrid dump trucks with 4 one-ton trucks to replace their aging fleet, and 2 utility vehicles with plows. And that cost will be, in fiscal year 23, the cost is $2.1 million for vehicles and equipment. Moving on to pedestrian safety, the overarching plan that the department is using is the Vision Zero plan, and they are preparing to launch the second iteration of the Vision Zero action plan. And overarching of all of their planning is the Vision Zero plan. You can see projects in construction on page 13. In terms of IT, the department has included $571,000 for IT initiatives proposed in 2024, and that's mostly for their transit system. Grant funds, there's a summary of grant funds at the top of page 14, and they are, the grant fund budget is proposed at $32.5 million, about $24.7 million above the fiscal 23 budget. Some highlights, they have done very well as mentioned, and you can see some of the grants that they were successful in obtaining in the previous 2 fiscal years. And they also will be receiving the multi-year local bus capital grant, statewide specialized transportation assistant grant, and the transportation alternatives grants, also known as TAP grants. The county match for those grants is about $6.4 million, which is about $4.8 million above the previous year's budget. Under staffing for this budget, the fiscal year 24 proposed compensation is $314,000, and that provides for 3 full-time positions for the rideshare program. And staff levels remain unchanged from the fiscal year 23 approved level. Moving on to stormwater. On page 15, there is a budget comparison. Stormwater is proposed at $22.7 million, or $1.3 million above the previous year's budget. And there are proposed 145 positions in that budget. Moving on, operating expenses. You can see a table there on page 16 that summarizes the key line items for operating. And moving on to stormwater highlights. The storm drain division was restructured last year to become the Office of Storm Drain Maintenance. They're still focused on storm drain inventory. They have completed an assessment of all of their ponds. They are working on also removing sediment from key areas, or 18,000 cubics of sediment have been removed from key areas. Current projects funded under ARPA are those three projects there: Clinton Street, Swan Creek Road, and Longfield Drain projects. They, as noted, have also entered into a consent decree for those failing ponds, and they are addressing those as noted on page 17. Special Revenue Fund. In fiscal 24, the Transportation Service Improvement Special Revenue Fund is approximately $1.8 million, which is unchanged from the 23 budget. And some highlights on the page 18. All revenues generated, of course, are from the 25 cents per trip surcharge. The fund balance right now is about 10.6 million, and with 1.2 million to be kept in reserves. Anticipated expenditures will be used to support transit services, pedestrian safety, equipment, and first mile, last mile programs, including bike share and PGC Link. And just an overview of the CIP. There are 52 projects in the CIP program. The 24 to 29 CIP is proposed at 1.7 billion. The fiscal year 24 program is proposed at approximately 180.8 million. On page 19 and 20, there's some highlights there of bridge repair and replacement project work that is being undertaken. There's also a highlight there of stormwater projects, and please note that there are 3 sections in the stormwater portion of the CIP budget that are executed by Department of Public Works and Transportation. The other projects are for the Department of Environment. The Stormwater Management Program proposed funding is 43.2 million, and that's to address drainage, culvert replacements, and reconstruction. Curb and road is very vital, and the department appreciates when the council provides extra funding in this category because the needs are so extensive. There is no carry forward in bonds going into 24, and so any additional amounts allocated for this area, I know the department will appreciate. And as mentioned, they underwent the PCI study. They are now analyzing that data to see the extent and the scope of needs in terms of road repair and rehab. There's a highlight there for regarding the Maryland 210 and the next intersection that will be addressed there. In terms of TOD, the funding request is 19.7 million with 5 million in raised grants. New Carrollton Multimodal Metro Station is one of the key projects under that TOD section. Facilities, There's a substantial need to rehab the DRC Road, Glendale, and other facilities that fall under DPW&T. And so there is funding in the budget to address those concerns. There's also a summary of the MDOT CTP program, notably under there. Medical Center Drive Interchange is programmed through fiscal year 2028 at $54.8 million. Additional funding is also included for construction of Suitland Parkway Interchange, Maryland 197 in Bowie, and Maryland 717 Bridge replacement in Upper Marlboro. The Highway Safety Plan, which expired in 2021, is going to be relaunched, and that will be inclusive of the new Vision Zero Action Plan with all of the requirements that tie between those two plans. Purple Line is still chugging along very slowly but surely. There's a summary there, and also just an update on maglev. And I've included a list of all 52 CIP projects at the end of your report, kind of showing the 23 approved budget and the 24 proposed and total costs. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Let me turn to Director Johnson.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to leave time for questions too.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. Mike Johnson, Director, DPW&T. I'll be very brief. I'll try not to, go over stuff that was mentioned before. But before I get started, I just want to introduce the members of my team that are here with me. To my left is Kanja Reed. She's our fiscal coordinator and chief of finance. To my right is Christy Cluster, and she's our budget management analyst. And in the audience, we have Joanna Smith, our associate director of OSDM, storm drain maintenance. Efon Ipanti is the chief for transit planning innovation, and Irv Beckett, our chief of highway and bridge design. So I would just go over some of the core services we have, some of the initiatives, and then I probably would stop and sort of leave time for questions, because I understand we have a fairly compressed period. So some of the core services that DPW&T offers, we operate a transit, a transit system that consists of approximately 100 fixed route buses, 60 paratransit vehicles, and with we service about 3 million vehicle trips a year. We as an agency are moving aggressively towards a zero emission bus future, because we see that's the way to move forward. In addition to that, we are in charge of the capital programs for the county. We do have 900 bridges that we maintain, and are responsible for more than 800 stormwater management structures. And we are engaged in a very creative and forward-thinking multimodal reconfiguration of our bus system, working in partnership with WMATA. So if we could move to maybe to slide 5. Okay, so some of our, yeah, that's okay. Okay, thanks. Some of our major priorities, we are focused a lot on safety. Unfortunately, the county has many roads that are considered quite dangerous. I think we have the record in the county, in the state. And to that end, we have been very successful in terms of obtaining a fairly large grant, a $21 million grant from the US DOT, to address 7 of those roads that are on the high injury network in the state. Unfortunately, some of those roads are also state roads. Most of the roads that are sort of high injury are state roads, and we work in partnership with our partners at SHA, MDOT, to attempt to try to reduce that number. The approach that we're taking, just to sort of encapsulate, is that we're using a data-centric approach that is sort of ensconced in the Vision Zero IDA. So that we sort of look, there's sort of our 6 components to the Vision Zero IDA, and the data is a part of it. You sort of are looking and measuring and sort of testing and looking for ways to improve the performance of the road in terms of conflicts with pedestrians and vehicles with other vehicles. Another big initiative that we had was the beautification, and this has 2 parts for us. We are focused heavily on litter removal, and we have reconfigured the way in which the department is approaching that problem. A lot of our roads were heavily littered. I could say were. I mean, because when we did an 18-week blitz, during which we collected about 925 tons of litter in that period. And what it did for us, in addition to sort of going through the exercise of that, was that it helped us to recalibrate the manner in which we are approaching litter. That again, we are using data to drive the way in which we are tackling this problem. One of the ways of recording this also is the importance of spatially organizing it. And in the conversation that you had with Director Kroons, where you're asking about areas that are sort of heavily littered, we have found that using a spatial way is the better way to do it, or a better way to visualize the problem that we're facing. So in addition to us having a more aggressive, I would say, or comprehensive way of monitoring our contractors and measuring their performance, we know how much litter should be picked up every period. And if we see that that is being under-collected, we sort of intervene and sort of, try to get the numbers where we know that where they should be. We're also recording visually where illegal dumps are occurring, and that will sort of help us to develop hotspots that we can then determine. Not just collect. DPW&T has always collected the litter. One of the things that we're doing differently is that we want to really ask this question, the underlying question: what makes this area attractive for dumping? Is there something that, is it poorly lit? Does it need more cutting? Do we need to block off streets or put cameras? Or what measure is needed to sort of improve this? And by following that sort of data-driven approach, we're making very good progress. I think the county streets, and when we go out and talk to the community, are a lot cleaner than they have been in a while, and that's a direct result of the measures that we've taken. We also are working extensively on the consent decree that Director Kroons had mentioned. Several of our ponds are in that, and we are on track to get that in line with the compliance by the end of December of 2024. Our flood control channel maintenance and our Right Tree, Right Place program, which that's one of our wonderful programs, most successful. We've used that to plant 10,000 new trees in an area where our tree canopy has sort of been diminishing over time due to development and possibly management of the tree inventory that we have. And our zero emission bus transition I mentioned. And the last big one that we are focusing on is the 311. The 311 had like 2 parts. There was the Motorola system, which was the older system, and then the new system that was adopted. When we began to look at the 311 complaints that DPW&T had, we found that there was an extensive number, thousands of backlog tickets, that we then said this, we have to take a different way of looking at this, because the sum of this was that the public generally felt that the 311 system was ineffective and did not work. And that's not really true. I think that really the manner in which we were approaching the 311 might have needed some tweaking. So we did that, and what we've been able to do is that complaints prior to 2022, we've closed 85% of those. And we have an aggressive strategy. We have weekly meetings, and we've moved it from lower down in the organization up to the director's office so that it gets the attention that it needs to sort of make that change. In addition to that, we're making other structural changes in terms of how this is managed that really the manner in which we'll have a dedicated workforce for 311 for closing tickets, for triaging complaints, because many complaints that come in are not rail complaints, to put it that way. They could be outside of the county area, they could be on private property, they could be things that are not necessarily a concern, but each one currently, prior to our doing this, each complaint was treated as if it were rail, and so it's kind of ate up a lot of staff time and made the problem kind of like a sort of overwhelming. So we're making really good progress on that, and then we're about 50% closure of some of the older, the more recent tickets. We want to really clear off the backlog, and then we will begin to divert our resources to sort of bringing our service levels into line with what we feel that they should be. So I think I just want to go to Vision Zero, and then I'll sort of stop for questions. So the Vision Zero program that we have, as I've mentioned, is sort of designed to address the sort of unfortunate data that we have on Prince George County streets. And it is a national program, but it's something that we feel that is extremely useful, and if done using this approach, education, emergency response, and that's where you want, if there is an accident, you do want the vehicles to be able to get there in time to render aid. There's an engineering component, and enforcement, and evaluation, and of course the most important part, equity. That areas that are sort of equity emphasis areas, we do want to make sure that they're not being neglected or left out in terms of the treatments that they receive. If we just go on to the next slide, thank you. Oh, go back. One more. Was there one of the kid? Yeah. Okay, I think that's it. Okay. And then, the final thing, our pavement management, as was mentioned, we are sort of not only are we looking at the pavements, we've driven our pavements, and are in the process of sort of going through and analyzing that data. But another way that we're looking at, we have sidewalks that are also a problem, and we're also taking the same approach to dealing with our sidewalks. And at the end of it, the benefit of that is that we will have a comprehensive understanding of the problem, so then we can develop an appropriate program that can be funded and with definable time frames within which work can be completed. So I'll stop at this point and sort of avail myself. Our team will be able to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Director Johnson. Let me turn to Councilmember Watson, if you have any questions. Okay. No? Okay. Okay.
No, I appreciate it. Just wanted to say thank you so much. We've talked a lot personally in meetings, so I'm good to go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Ivey.
Thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. You've been very responsive, and we appreciate that. I wanted to know a little bit about the street sweeping program. How many of those trucks do we have?
We currently have one in-house sweeper and a contractor who sweeps in certain cycles. In the budget that we put in, we're requesting 3 additional sweepers, and we're in the process right now of building out a county-wide sweeping program. Now, this requires some work. I mean, many of the county streets I don't think have been swept in recent history and for many of the particularly in the residential areas. So we're in the process of sort of building that out, and we have to measure it against what the trucks can do every day to figure out what the correct frequency of sweeping is and the correct routes that would be required per day. But our goal is to be able to have sort of a more organized sweeping. One of the reasons why this is really important, just to give a thing, we swept 625 lane miles of roads during the Blitz of the 2,000 that we have. And those sweepers picked up more than 200 tons of litter. 200 tons of litter just from sweeping a fraction of the streets. So that tells you that litter is often diffused throughout the roads, and it's impossible for a human being to pick it up. But the machines, using the regenerative air, which can pick up also have stormwater benefits. They can pick up phosphorus and nitrogen. Some of the other sweepers are also with the brooms are also picking up a lot of this diffused litter, and it will help to make the county roads cleaner.
I did see one of the street sweepers on 202, but I assumed that was a state highway truck.
That is a state highway truck, and we've been working closely with SHA, District 3, and we have harmonized the way in which we are approaching litter. So not only do you have humans picking litter, but you also are sweeping. And SHA for years did not sweep. District 3 had no sweepers. So they are bringing more sweeping assets in as a way to deal with some of this diffuse litter that I talked about. That was District 3 sweepers.
Well, I have noticed that it does look better. It does look cleaner out there. And on Saturday for Earth Day, my team was out making 311 reports. But we were pretty pleased with what we saw. I mean, you're never happy when you see illegal dumping or litter or any of the other things that we did find. But it was less than it's been in the past. So I do appreciate it. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. Certainly.
Thank you. Councilmember Dernoga?
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. One, to me, this is a discrepancy, so I want to clarify it. On the curb and road rehabilitation, it's interesting, Ms. Baxter, you said that they spent all the money, something to that effect.
That they spent all the money for?
All the bonded money for curb and rehabilitation, street rehabilitation.
Yes, I mentioned that there's no carry forward.
Right. So the potential discrepancy is in your report on page 20. Unfortunately, these cords don't go far enough. It says that in FY24, the county's commitment to this category will remain at least $25.5 million, but I thought in the budget it was $36 million being proposed.
Yes, that's correct. Yes, so the 25 million is the commitment from the county. It is proposed at 36 million.
I don't understand what commitment means versus budget. Once we budget it, it's committed. And the budget proposes 36 million.
So I think what Lavinia is speaking to, 25 million is the general obligation bonds, and then there's $10 million grant that makes up the $36 million that's there.
That answers the discrepancy.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay.
For what?
For basically street repaving.
I had 12.4 million from, that was in the report. Where did 12.4 million come from?
I can't answer that question.
That was in the report.
It's 36 million being budgeted,
Hold on.
which the council had pushed every year for more money, and we got it up to 36 million. So yeah, we're working for you, Mr. Johnson.
Appreciate it.
So I would make sure we're spending it. I heard we were. One thing that I'm not concerned about, just would like information on, I hate to make you do any homework. We've always been told that that money is divided 9 ways and spent pretty much equally. So in prior budgets back in earlier years, we would get a breakdown how much was being spent in our district. Do you have that breakdown by district?
We could provide that. I don't have it with me here, but we could provide, the breakdown by district. Certainly we could.
Yeah, I just fear that District 1 and maybe some other districts have been shortchanged in the last couple of years. So I'd like to make sure that we're getting our fair share. And did you get my email about my district boundaries?
I did, and I forwarded it on to them to ask them to take a look at why there was that discrepancy.
Well, there was a redistricting.
The redistricting, I see. Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
yeah, as much as I want to see streets in District 2 paying, they can use their own funds.
Yeah, so they're looking into that, and they'll get back to me. I'll get back to you.
So for the past several years, I've raised oh, you have an answer, Ms. Baxter?
I was just addressing, I see the page 10 where you're referring to that 12.4.
Right.
Yeah, that's incorrect.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you for
So it's
pointing that
36
out.
million.
Yeah, total budget is 36 million.
All right. That's much better.
Much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think 12 million was for District 1. I brought up the need to repave Cherry Lane, which is a 6-lane major little thoroughfare, the portion from 197 to Route 1. And in the past, I've been told we don't need a CIP project for it. Something similar was done on Conti Road, and there was a CIP project. It looks like a lava flow. I mean, the road is so torn up, and I've been told that we can handle it somehow through the repaving budget or doing this or that or something magical, but I don't think anything magical has happened. So are you familiar with this situation on Cherry Lane or anyone in your staff?
I'm familiar with the condition, but I would have to get back to you with the details as to when we're going to be able to address that. I don't have that as we're speaking right now.
Okay.
But I will get back to you on that.
Yeah, but we have to put in our CIP projects by tomorrow, so expect one. Maybe you can convince me we don't need it, but I'll put it in because I'm legally required to do it. Tree cutting. Seems like, for one thing, I thought the council increased the tree cutting budget last year, but I might be wrong. But if I saw the CIP number, it's under $1 million for tree cutting. It's on the last page of the.
I thought you were a tree hugger.
Street tree removal and replacement. Looks like $900,000 being proposed.
You're a tree hugger.
So it was $1 million for both 23 and 24 for tree planting. All right.
Not planting. This is
So is it
removal and replacement. So
Oh, the same. It's the same.
I'm looking at the page 24. It's got a summary. It shows 400,000 in FY23. Maybe that's the year's not over, but it's proposing 900,000 in FY24.
So is this the same? It's 900,000. Oh. but-
Is that incorrect?
So it looks like it's 900,000 for 24, and was it like $1 million? Was it $1 million in other years, in prior years? So what, 100,000 difference?
Well, I'm just thinking, we get so many complaints about street trees, and it takes, for the most part, unless there's a real emergency, it takes forever to get trees trimmed. You know, maybe we need a larger budget there. It's one point, maybe it's a question, but it's a point. And then regarding that, I'm curious about the process by which you determine to do trees. Is it purely response to complaints, or do you strategically look at communities that are older and say, let's come through 1 week, assess which trees need to be trimmed, and then come through and do a whole community? Because I've been in certain communities where it's like, it doesn't make sense to have someone come out 25 times for 25 different trees when you could just sweep the whole neighborhood and take care of everything at once. So I'm curious about how you approach. Is it completely responsive, or is there a upfront program strategy?
Yeah, Councilman, the way in which we've changed the way in which we're, as part of the 311 effort, because a fair number of the 311 complaints had been trees. So we are changing the way. So not only are we shortening the service time that it takes to address a tree. If a tree is dangerous, we address it immediately. If it's has potential to be dangerous, we also address it fairly rapidly. And then in addition to that, we're also proactively going through, as you're saying, neighborhoods that are older, where we do have the record of what is with trees, or they haven't been pruned in a while, and sort of addressing those in a manner that is a bit more proactive than it had been in the past, I believe.
Okay, so then I'm glad to hear that. That's great. My next question, I'll make a statement, then I'll turn it to a question. Maybe it would make sense for your designated point person, whoever's at the supervisor level, to coordinate with the council offices, because we tend to know our communities, and we could probably help direct you to communities that might be more in need, rather than your staff trying to just look historically and collaborating, we might be able to come up with a better prioritization. Is that something you'd be willing to do?
Absolutely. I mean, that's actually an excellent idea. And if your, chief of staff would send us, or even if you sent it to me, I would then make sure that it's
Well,
sent.
how about if I turn this around? Why don't you designate a point person to contact all of our chiefs of staff? You can do it in one email and say, I'm the point person.
Okay, that's going to be even better idea. Yeah, we can do it that way. We could do it that way.
I've been around
for
the
sure.
block once or twice.
Okay.
Last thing, taxis. And I'm not going to go down I helped rewrite the taxi law 15 years ago. I was stunned to hear that we have 75 to 100 taxis. We used to have like 1,000 medallions. I understand, but I know there's Uber, but that leads to a budget question. So we only have 75 to 100 taxis. Is that really the case? Licensed?
You want to say something?
And I should say that what's in the report is an estimated number of taxis.
Understood, but when it used to be 1,000, and we were fighting to change it to 1,200 because 3 companies controlled 900 of the 1,000 medallions. I know the world's changed, but
Yeah, we have less than 100 during the peak of COVID. So right now the department is planning to do a survey, reach out to the different taxi companies to know exactly how many active taxis do we have in the county.
do we still have I'll call them medallions, but certificates, medallions? Do we still have an authorization for like 1,000 of those or 1,200?
Yes, we do.
But have they all been turned in and they're not being used, or just people have them?
During COVID, the office was really was down. We basically were not in operations, so we're basically bringing back staff, asking them to go back and call. Usually we make calls to the taxi companies when their licenses or their medallions are expiring. They come in, they register, they pay the fees. So it's a whole process. So we're trying to redo that process. So we've not done it for the past 2 years.
So they have to pay an annual fee. There's supposed to be an annual inspection
Yes.
every couple of years. But if there's only 75, I'll call it 100 active taxis, what's happening? Is no one registering their other taxis, but they're holding the medallions?
Yes, we've not really been doing the inspections because of the COVID-19 pandemic.
No, I got that, but we'll say that's over. Seems to me, if you have people who are effectively hoarding these very limited medallions, you need to invalidate them or let them be warned that they're going to be invalidated if they're not going to use them, because there might be other people out there who want to use them who can't get access to one. Do we have a ready supply of available ones? If I wanted to start driving a taxi tomorrow, which frankly it might be attractive right now, can I show up at DPW and get myself a medallion because there's ones available, or do I have to buy one from some other taxi?
You'll have to show up at DPW&T, the taxi office, and they will process that for you.
But some exist. So
Yes, we don't have an exact figure on what exists at this point. We can get that to you. I'll have to check on that.
Okay, well, I hate to drag this into taxi discussion. We should actually do this in TIE outside of budget. But Mr. Johnson, I remember 15 years ago working with the independent taxi folks, talking a dozen years ago about them getting a dispatch system. And they were looking at that. And the companies that existed, the 3 that controlled the industry, had dispatch systems. The shocking thing that I'm hearing is we're going to buy a dispatch system. Why are we buying a dispatch system?
Well, we've been working with the taxi company. So before COVID, we contracted with the company. We did a pilot project. It's called CURB. We wanted our taxi companies in the county to register so that we can track it like a central database. That pilot project really did not work well because most companies did not register, or the drivers, the independent taxi providers did not register into the system.
Yeah,
So I'm
really questioning this, Mr. Johnson. I mean, the companies had their own system. The independent drivers needed something. If we feel that there's enough independence that we want to do something, I'm open to it. But what's the cost for doing the dispatch system?
Currently, it's estimated between $300,000 to $500,000.
I think we need a discussion around this. That's a whole lot more
Yeah.
road repaving or street trees. Particularly if the pilot's not working, people aren't using it.
It's something that we'll look into, and
Well,
yeah, we can get back to you with an answer on.
Very quick, because we're
on that.
approving the budget
Okay.
in a month.
Okay.
And I'm very sensitive to particularly the independent taxi drivers. But on the other hand, I'm sensitive to spending $500,000 for private industry if it's not needed. As Ms. Ivy said, there is Uber. That's why we're in this situation.
Right.
Uber seems to provide a dispatch system. All right, I'm done. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry to go down the taxi.
That's fine. No, thank you, Mr. Droga. That's a good question about that. I mean, why would we spend that kind of money on something that's the industry's not really? Yeah, that doesn't add up to me at this point. I just have a few questions. Where to begin? On the road repaving, and this is shamelessly parochial. I'm looking at my colleagues and my road resurfacing, and I look at District 3, and none of them have any status in them. Everyone else has like completed or concrete work. The only one actually, and Councilmember Watson, is Margarita Avenue, which used to be in District 3, but is no longer, and it's completed. So I'm glad that you got that one, but I just don't know what the status is, and if we could update that and make sure that you got something on yours. So, and I know we spoke, Director Johnson, about some of the streets and the needs, and I know, like in terms of Furman Parkway, it should be the whole length of it rather than ending at Furman Court. And I know that's getting into the weeds a little bit, but we can talk a little more about that. But I don't understand why there's nothing, no status. But look forward to working with you on that. Sidewalks. So you had also talked, when we spoke separately, you spoke about getting all the sidewalks in the county redone. I thought you said this coming fiscal years. Was that correct?
Not redone. We're assessing them all. Right, we're assessing them.
But then you're able to do how many that need it?
Yeah, the benefit of doing it that way is that it sort of quantifies the problem that we're facing, the scope of the problem. So that it might be, suppose it turned out to be, say, I'm just making this figure up, 2 million square feet.
Yeah.
Once you have that figure, you can render that into a number, into a budget number. You can also render that into a schedule, like how many square feet can be done per year. So it gives the benefit to us, as well as to our stakeholders, is that it allows us to relay cost and schedule that is accurate, as opposed to a best guess, which is sort of like what happens if you don't know the full scope of the problem.
I see. Yeah, that makes more sense. Yeah. Okay, but you believe that this coming fiscal year you can have everything assessed?
I believe that that is somewhere in that range that we are shooting for that. We're using the ATVs, as I mentioned to you, to sort of ride with the sensors.
Right.
But our goal is to sort of work along that with that timeline. It could bleed over a little bit, but that's what we're working for.
Okay, terrific. And the budget for sidewalk, is that the same? Is that wrapped into the same budget as pavement? Okay, so that's all within the 36 million. Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Wanted to ask about storm drains and do we do assessment of the storm drains, like for clogging? And I mean, when's the most recent? Is it ongoing? Do we have an assessment of the storm drains?
I don't think that we have the staffing or the ability. We have several hundred miles of drains, so we couldn't really have like an inspection program as such. So I think that there are periodic areas that are known to be areas that flood, and probably those would be like low points. If you just just from the physics of it, right, the water would flow to the low points, it would carry debris to the low points, and they would tend to clog.
Right.
So the jet vacs that we have, these trucks that are vector trucks, would go and sort of periodically, in advance of a storm, clean out the areas that are have potential for clogging, and that's sort of the general methodology that we use. But we don't have an inspection program. It's not something that we
Okay.
can really have the bandwidth to
Okay,
do.
so it's more of a, when we hear about it, we let you know, and then you go out and take care of it.
No, we have we often have a rain action plan. Like we have rain tomorrow, this
Sure.
evening through tomorrow through Saturday, I believe. So we have what's called a rain action plan. The rain action plan is we figure out the amount of rain, the intensity of the rainfall, and then there are standard operating procedures that are followed to sort of mitigate the effects of inundation. So the jet vacs would go to these locations, open up the drains, make sure that the drains and the low points are cleared, and things pertaining to levees and things to sort of prevent flooding as best we can.
Okay, well, I have 2 locations for you, and we can, I guess, talk after, although I did send an email to you about one of them, which was, I guess it's been an ongoing thing between the city of College Park and and your department about, they say that it is county storm drain, and consequently they've not been worked on, so we do need to get them taken care of. So I'll talk to you after about that.
Okay.
Bike share stations. I noted that there are 3 bike share stations, which they were on the list when I was in office before, at the end of my term, and I'm glad that they're on the list to be done, but I'm wondering if they're actually going to get done this year. These are the ones on Guilford Road, Hotel Drive, and Mowat Lane.
Can you speak to that? Sure.
Good afternoon. This is Irv Beckert, Chief of Highway and Bridge Design for DPW&T. For our bike share program, we had previously had that funded through a TAP grant. We were able to transfer that grant to a much more appropriate use, and that was the Metrot Road Pedestrian Safety Improvement Project. We got a lot more money for that grant, and therefore all the challenges we had, and this is why it took so long to get to where we were on bike share, was because of the federal aid restrictions on bike shares, the capital acquisition, the Buy America provisions, the NEPA certifications, all that stuff has delayed that. We are now going to use county funding in FY24, so it's not going to be done this fiscal year, but it'll be done in fiscal year 24.
After July 1st, right after
You
July
got
1st,
it.
right?
As soon as we can, as soon as we
Okay.
can. What we have to do is we've cleared right away. We've gotten our permits. Another challenge we had, Councilmember Olson, was University of Maryland,
Okay.
getting them to agree, getting them to sign the requisite agreements.
Okay.
That was a
But it has
forever
been
experience.
signed now.
It has been.
All right, so everything's
yeah.
ready to go. Is that right? No
We
more
gotta,
hurdles.
No, we have to put in the. Now we have to construct the pads. So we're going to do that in FY24. That's a relatively basic operation, but we have to shoehorn that into our existing pavement rehab contracts. We'll get it done in FY24.
Okay.
Okay.
Let's get that done. Let's be in touch on that, and
Sure,
and please let me know. I'll be calling you on July 1st.
June 30th, 2024. Thank you.
Okay. I know our time is running short here. Well, we're overtime. Yes, we are. We're in overtime. I will follow up with any other questions that I have. I know my colleagues asked some of the other questions that I had. So thank you very much. I'm sorry, Councilmember
I'm sorry,
Ivey.
I've missed this one before, but just when you're out walking around here at lunchtime, Lotsford Road doesn't have any crosswalks, and people have a tendency to speed through. So it's kind of when you talk about Vision Zero, it's really puts a target on people's backs. So whatever you can do to help with that, we'd really appreciate it.
Okay, will do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.